quick warning, this podcast is uncensored. We talk about sex, fashion, and everything in between. Expect strong language, adult themes, and a lot of oversharing. If that's not for you, skip this one. Hi, welcome to Fashion Is My Foreplay. I'm your host, Elizabeth, which you will probably know by now as we are on episode 5. I am going to do a two-parter. It's going to be a little bit more background about me and why I think I should be hosting this. So the first part is going to be about my history with the fashion industry, what I've done, what I want to do. And then the other part is going to be about my sex life and the history of my sex life and what I've done and what I want to do. But kind of give you a bit of an insight as to why I talk so openly about sex, etc., etc. So we're going to start off with my history in fashion, what I've done, and how I kind of came to the fashion industry. So it's actually a bit random. I had a baby, and this was during lockdown. He was born on February 11th. Lockdown was on March 23rd. So we literally had just over a month to have a baby out of lockdown. However, he was really poorly, so we were in hospital the majority of that 3 month before lockdown kicked off. And like when I was giving birth and stuff, there was like COVID cases in the hospital and things, so it was definitely there. Anyway, because he was a lockdown baby, I could only shop for him in places like Sainsbury's, Tesco's, because they were the only places open. Town obviously wasn't open. H&M obviously wasn't open. Primark wasn't open. You've all been there. So I was kind of stuck with these very typical supermarkets, which kind of followed a very typical gender kids clothing section. And I just remember walking in all the time and being like, pink or blue? And I hate baby blue. I don't like it. Yeah, it just was kind of a bit like, I don't want to dress him like this. Like, where's the orange? Where's the red? Where's the green? You know, where's the purple? Actually, I hate purple. That's such a lie. But you get my drift. So I was just like super unhappy with all of the clothing options for him. And that was kind of like niggling at the back of my mind. It wasn't like the key starter, but it was there. It was definitely there from the beginning and all of that. Anyway, so my fast forward to August. My little sister's birthday is August the 8th. And I bought her a sewing machine. And I was like, get onto it. Let's sew. And I always grew up watching America's Next Top Model, Project Runway, all of those. I've always been super obsessed with the fashion industry and modelling and all of that. But I could never draw. So I never kind of like put myself in that creative bubble because I thought, well, if you can't draw, you can't be a fashion designer, can you? Little did I know. So yeah, I kind of like was always interested in it. I did really well in textiles when I was at Blatch. Just it never kind of went anywhere because I just thought, well, I can't draw. I'm not creative. I had this baby, had that sort of gender thing niggling at the back of my mind, and bought my sister this sewing machine. She never used it. So I was like, right, we're in lockdown, let's do it. So I downloaded a little bonnet pattern and some bloomers and thought, I'm going to make a little bonnet and bloomer. Got out my sister's sewing machine, and I'm talking like a cheap John Lewis sewing machine. I've still got it actually. I use it for buttonholes only now. And I sat down at the table. I was living with my entire family, took over the entire kitchen and just made Sherlock some bloomers and a bonnet from some fabric, because I'd started to collect vintage fabric, which had grown from the handmade children's clothing community of Instagram. And I'd bought him a couple of little bonnets from that. And then that's kind of how my sewing started. It started through baby bonnets. I was also doing cloth nappies the whole time that he was a baby. And kind of like having all these prints and designs and stuff really kind of made me realise that fashion has no gender. My favourite quote from Glee season 1 from Kurt. And a lot of these people were like, oh, I want to buy this print, but it's for a girl and I have a boy. And it just really made me like ick. I was just like, why do we care? You are literally talking about a baby's genitals. But for kids, it really is, in my opinion, just so irrelevant whether they are a girl or a boy. we're literally just talking about their genitals when they're children at this point. I think obviously changed after puberty. So I was just like really taken aback by how everyone was so concerned about what they were putting their babies in. And I just kind of went from there and started getting really into the handmade community of Instagram, on the clothing side of things, and was dressing him in all these amazing prints and patterns from vintage fabrics. And like a lot of the 80s fabrics was kind of, I always went for colour and kind of unique patterns, more like paisley, dog's tooth, anything like that was kind of like really eye-catching. A little bit less of the florals. I did a lot of florals, but also like a little bit less of the florals because I liked all the wild patterns. So that's kind of how I started. That's where my fashion started. I then created my own little Instagram shop called Vintage Printage, which my mum kind of came up with the name idea, which I really, really loved. And I built a great community of people on that platform. It's kind of where my sort of like Instagram life started. And obviously during lockdown and stuff, I didn't have baby groups. I didn't have any of that. So it really was a lifesaver having this big supportive, well, not always supportive. There was definitely competition and people took it way too seriously. But it was very much a supportive group of friends. And one of my best mates, who I've spoken about so many times previously in the podcast, I met from Instagram by making baby clothes. And she is honestly one of my best mates, like really close. I really, really value her friendship. And that all came from this handmade community. So that's where it started. And then I built Vintage Printage and was doing that for a good couple of years. Had a very steady sort of client base and people who were willing to purchase my handmade clothing. If you do scroll down on my Instagram, you will see a couple of posts still on there, so you'll get an idea of the sort of things I was making. But it was very clashy, very bright fun fabrics, a lot of like character fabrics from the vintage duvets. Yeah, that was Vintage Printage. That was it. That was the whole kind of thing. And I was doing this from lockdown up until my second year of university. So when I was pregnant, I had really, really deep depression, but not postnatal depression like you usually get. I had antenatal depression. I had depression during my pregnancy. And a big thing for me during that pregnancy and during that depression was that I was very embarrassed about being pregnant. I wasn't young. Don't get me wrong. I was very young to be having a baby, but I wasn't a teenager. I didn't have that sort of embarrassment, but yet I was still very embarrassed because I was 22 when I had him. And I had this really deep-rooted depression. So I applied for university while I was pregnant because I just felt like I couldn't lose myself. I felt like I was too good to be put on this earth to not do something for me. Don't get me wrong, being a parent is an amazing thing. And the people who can parent 24/7, I take my hat off to you. I cannot do it. I'm selfish. And I think that's okay to admit. And I think mums do need to be a little bit more selfish sometimes. And I definitely just didn't want to be defined as just a mum, just Sherlock's mum. There had to be something else. I had to show him, I had to show myself, I had to show my family that there was something more about me than just being a mum. Now, I applied for the University of Chichester to do business management with events. I was always a business girly. I had always had businesses or was always on some sort of entrepreneurial journey throughout my life. Even like as a young kid, I remember setting up a babysitting group where I would link my mum's friends to my friends and, you know, create a sort of community. So I'd always done some sort of business. I'd done business A-level and done really well. And I just always thought I was going to go to university to do business. So I applied for the University of Chichester for, like I say, business management with events. And I was always a party girl. I always was hosting the parties and I thought events was brilliant for me. And I did a year of that and I did really well, got good grades, everything. I was really happy with it. I love the people. I love the staff. Don't get me wrong. We still were in lockdown, but it wasn't that intense lockdown. It was actually a couple of the modules were an intense lockdown. It was that random November slot where they'd locked everything back down again after the Eat Out to Help Out scheme that failed. However, there was something missing from that course. There was no room for creativity. There was no room for changing up the event spectrum. It was basically just changing the colour theme or the overall theme of the event, as opposed to actually changing the event itself. Now, don't get me wrong, this was just first year, so it could have possibly changed in the following years after that, for second and third year, and it could have definitely become more creative and more what I was looking for. However, I just very much wasn't getting what I needed, and by this point I was like in the full mix of vintage printage and was loving it. So I, like my typical ADHD brain does, hyper focused on finding a fashion degree, and I spent the summer from first year to second year basically just saying that I was going to do a fashion degree. And I went to virtual open days and I just scoured any university that was accepting people during the clearance stage, because obviously people would have applied months and months and months ago, and I was applying like a month before the start date. And that's when I came across the University for the Creative Art, and that's where I applied and I got in, and the whole process was probably a week. Like I literally applied, got in. Luckily, I had a portfolio because my friend Rosa, who I went to my first ever school with, was a shoe designer. So I asked her for a lot of help, and luckily she was really willing to help me. She sat down, helped me build a portfolio. Obviously, I was doing the vintage printage, so my portfolio was vintage printage and kind of what I was doing there with the kids' clothing. So yeah, I got in and I was like super thrilled. And my first day, I had an illustration class. And I literally broke down. I was like, fuck, I can't do this. Like, I can't draw. The drawing thing had never changed. I still can't draw. I can't draw to this day. And we had like this really intense illustration teacher who, you know, he is absolutely amazing and great at what he does. But I literally felt insulting coming in and being so shit. And I was like, Richard, I'm so sorry. Like, I'm actually like insulting your craft, but I can't do it. And it was mandatory to do illustration at this point. So first year was awful for me. I was brilliant at all the technical stuff, all the sewing, the physical making of the garments. Absolutely amazing. I had no design concept idea. Like I just didn't know anything about design. Everyone in my course had done kind of like an art A level or had always done some sort of textile design, anything like that A level. But I had come from a completely uncreative background in terms of my academics. Well, and in life really. I'd never viewed myself as a creative person. And we were doing like the illustration classes, we were doing the design classes, and there was just so much of it I just could not grasp to save my life. And my first year was awful. I was getting like 50s. Like it was really bad, and all my designs were horrendous, and I couldn't quite get the message across that I wanted to be getting across, which is obviously kind of where illustration comes into it. That's how you kind of get your ideas out there. Move on to the final semester of first year, and it just clicked. I just randomly got it, and I just really went with it, and digital print and digital media became a very big part of me because it wasn't necessarily drawing. And I made a print t-shirt, shirt thing, and a sculpted kind of poncho, and it kind of allowed me to go out of the box a little bit because I didn't want to be doing sort of, you know, very classic Chanel Dior type garments. Like I wanted that kind of avant-garde, bit different, bit out there, bit like in your face type thing. And that kind of really showed me how I was doing it and what my process was. Then second year, another great year. I really kind of really understood who I was as a designer, and like the things that I really valued in my designs, which was concept. I love a concept. I love a research, and I love being able to kind of like throw my sort of opinions in a design or send a message. So we had this amazing guest tutor come in. A lot of people didn't get on with him. I absolutely thrived with him. I thought he was brilliant. Adam Entwistle, who's an amazing designer. And he just kind of really understood me and really let me kind of go for it. And as well was the third year teacher, Jason. He just really let me go for it. And he wasn't kind of there to tick boxes academically and wasn't there to kind of like make sure that we got firsts or anything like that. He was there to kind of build out our design styles and get what we wanted to say out there. So he was really brilliant, and he was exactly what I needed. Both of them were. And like, no hate to the other teachers or anything like that, but for me, my learning style wasn't about ticking boxes. It was more just about getting it out there, getting my message out there, and really relying on my concept. So that was second year. Second year was brilliant. I ended up co-hosting the fashion show with my friend Dimitri, and that's kind of where I really learned to thrive and really learn the part of the fashion industry that I really love. I loved the organisation behind it, and I loved putting a show together. And that's a really, really fun, incredible experience. And then I'll quickly talk about the third year, although things do start to overlap here a lot as well. So in my third year, I really went with my concept, and I actually took my dream wedding as my concept. And I'm not like a huge one on sitting down with like a scrapbook and having a dream wedding by any means. Like, my wedding concept was Vegas 80s hooker. Like, I really loved that sort of 80s design and style, and I love that sort of like Vegas hookery, like, yeah, let's go. I've always been a bit of a laugh like that. So I took that and I kind of mixed it with Princess Diana and her absolutely incredible 80s wedding dress by the Emanuels. And yeah, that is kind of where my third year started, with a concept, and it just absolutely ballooned from there. And I went literally from getting the worst marks in the class to some of the best. And it's really not about marks by any means. It was about, you know, putting your stuff out there and, you know, having opportunities and such. And this is where my opportunities started. So I applied for a competition for Dazed magazine and ended up being a finalist, which was huge. I think a lot of people in my year group were shocked. The girl who came in not being able to draw, not being able to design a single thing, and having absolutely no idea about creativity or concept or anything, is now being featured in Dazed magazine. Like, can you actually imagine? It was insane. I didn't win the whole competition, but it didn't really matter. Like, the competition was, the finalists were featured in Dazed Media, and that's all I was hoping for. Finished my final collection, 6-piece collection, again all based on 80s sex work and Diana, and putting that together. And yeah, all of that kind of idea came about from the initial beginning of third year. So that was my kind of uni years. However, during my third year, and a little bit actually after my second year, I met one of my really close friends, Kim Howells, who is a stylist. Hopefully she'll be coming on the pod quite soon. I know she's been a bit busy recently. And we actually met at a Zandra Rhodes Christmas party. I went with an ex who was also in the fashion industry and really loved Zandra. And we'd met there, just kind of passing, both of us guests type thing. And then a couple months later, I went and dropped my son at school, and we had a new boy in our class. And I was like, oh, hi, nice to meet you. Went up to the mum, all of this. And another mum introduced us, and she was like, oh, you both are into fashion. And I was like, oh yeah, hi, I'm studying fashion, blah, blah, blah. And she basically just threw an opportunity my way and said, do you want to jump on board my styling team for London Fashion Week, spring, summer 24? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. And this was the best week of my life. I have LFW SS24 tattooed on my arm to remind me of that week. It was absolutely incredible. I don't even know how we did it. I don't know how we survived that week in our little styling team, but we did. I think I did a total of 6 shows that week. Yeah, so let's talk about that week. So that was my first ever fashion week. We did Dr. Noki. I did Hibiscus Ibiza. That was away from Kim's side, and it was with another stylist designer who I know called Carly Hughes, who again is amazing. KWK Cakewalk, who, oh my god, incredible work. You've seen it on Beyonce, like insane. Adam Frost, who is just an absolute sweetheart, like friend for life. We did Sabiro, which is just yeah, all of those brands absolutely incredible, all very different. I mean, Sabira is built on modesty. It's built on modesty luxury wear, whereas Dr. Noki is built on art. So it was absolutely the most incredible week of my entire life. I also met a man while I was there. Kim hooked me up with her friend from New York. I fell madly in love and had an incredible 6-month relationship with this guy who lived in New York, and it was just a proper romance rom-com type relationship, but it wasn't gonna last. We lived 3,500 miles away from each other, but yeah, he was beautiful and it just added perfectly to the week. So what was my kind of role during that week? So my role was to support Kim, support the styling team. I was one of the styling assistants, and there was 4 of us in total. And we were just there to kind of help put looks together, help cast, help putting which models are wearing what. We broke up into different teams and worked with different designers some days. Some days we were all together. And I very much focused on Dr. Noki and Adam Frost. I originally wasn't going to be there for the Sabira show because I was at the Hibiscus Ibiza show, but ended up making it to the Sabira show, thank God, because I would have been gutted if I'd missed it. So yeah, we were really helping with putting the looks together, putting the people in the looks, dressing, being in charge of the dresses, finding models. I helped with a lot of casting. So the first show we did was the KWK show, and that was where I met my man backstage, and I literally remember that. He came backstage, he was like, "Hi, nice to meet you." So that was like a real highlight of my show at KWK. But KWK was an amazing show. It was a scheduled LFW show, and the designs were insane. It's like a lot of 3D printing. Backstage was chaos, but in the best way possible. I put together the most amazing dressing team, and yeah, we all really bonded, and it was just the most incredible experience. And then the second show I did was Hibiscus Ibiza with my friend Carly, who is a designer. This was like a big kind of U-turn, and we kind of did it was a lot more sort of like queer and loud and bubbly and festival, because it's a festival sort of like vibe. It's Ibiza dancers, and I modelled. Now, I did not have the confidence to be doing this, but I did it, and I wore a wig like out here. It was incredible, and like the biggest high heels ever, and I had to walk down the runway with the most good looking guy I've ever seen in my life. Absolutely brilliant atmosphere. And remember, all this is happening in 1 week, in a few days. I then left Hibiscus Ibiza and ran straight to Sabira. I literally ordered an Uber and was like, get me there, like proper London Fashion Week style, and walked into Sabira with full glam, where I'd just come from a show, all my hair like scraped back from my wig, everything, and we just went straight into Sabira. Everything is like silk and beautiful, and we were doing it in Somerset House, and all of our models were just absolutely stunning, and all the garments were stunning. Everything was so pure and so beautiful, and yeah, it was just the epitome of elegance. So complete U-turn again. And that was an incredible night. And then the final day of London Fashion Week, we had 2 shows in one day. We had Adam Frost, and then we had Dr. Noki. Adam Frost was very close to my heart. Like, I really got on with Adam as a person. We're still really close. I still message him. He's living in Berlin at the moment, but I do message him all the time and just like check in, see how he is. And yeah, his designs were a lot of kind of like pink PVC and a lot of print. He's very much an artist. We had the most amazing makeup team who just brought all these looks to life, and an incredible hair team from Schwarzkopf Pro with Nick Irwin, Leslie Jensen. Yeah, incredible hair team. There was wigs out here, up here, coming all the way down. We had the most amazing shoes. It was the clothes, it was the makeup, it was the hair, it was the shoes, it was the accessories. We had an incredible accessories designer. It was the casting. Hats off to me. I did very well on that casting. I got a lot of people involved who I knew were great models. And yeah, it was absolutely an incredible show that all very much came together at the last minute in the best way possible. So that was in the daytime, and then we stayed in the same venue, and we literally flipped that place ready for Dr. Noki. A complete U-turn. Dr. Noki is very rave, very grungy, very the epitome of sort of like 80s, 90s British culture, and there's a lot of kind of like reworked fashion. And again, I had to walk this runway. But this time, the man that I was at this point 3 days hooking up with was in the audience, and I was like, oh my god, Kim, please, I can't do this is so, I just felt so embarrassed. I definitely didn't have the confidence that I do now. And anyway, I was wearing this incredible reworked dress which was very much like Barbie girl. I had like fake hair and fake foils in my hair, and the beautiful Leslie Jensen did that for me. Shout out to her, absolutely love her. On set and behind the scenes was so nice. There was no divas. There was none of this sort of like movie culture where you think that like all the models are going to be absolute divas. No, none of that at all. And again, I was put in heels for this one. I was walking down the runway. There's photographers at the end of the runway, like I'm talking full London Fashion Week runway, and I was stood there on it, my first London Fashion Week. It was an experience. I always said I'd never do it again, but now I definitely would. Looking back, I definitely would do it again. And if you ever get the chance to do anything like that, just really, really go for it. It was just, I don't even know how to explain it. I really don't. And then after that week as well, there was press that came out. I was in ID magazine from the Dr. Noki show. His Hibiscus Ibiza show was put into Hunger magazine. So that was my big fashion sort of break, I suppose you would call it. So I met a lot of people, did a lot of networking, have kept in touch with so many people from just that week, and also found the love of my life. But obviously that wasn't meant to be. And then after that, just like really, really stayed close with Kim. She, as I say, she's one of my best mates. And she just threw me on any sort of shows or shoots that she had, and she really sat me down and kind of like made me think about design and stuff. And she really said that you've got a knack for being backstage, you've got a knack for the shows, you've got a knack for production and all that side of it, which really made me think, and spoke to my lecturers a lot about as well, because obviously I was still at uni at this time, so I was kind of like working with her part-time, freelance as and when, and I still do that now. So that is something that I do still do now. If she ever needs help, I'm always there to help. I've done design for her. I designed a dress for Leslie Jensen's show in the Hair Noise event, which was absolutely incredible. That was in October last year. I designed a blue melty sort of dress. Anyway, so I've done design for Kim, I've done a lot of styling assisting for Kim, and I've also kind of moved on and done some production stuff for her as well, helping with the actual production side of shoots. And then that really made me think about what I wanted to do in fashion after university. And I really knew after university I didn't want to do design. I really just didn't. And it wasn't anything against design or anything like that. It was just I knew that my skills were better suited elsewhere. And I really thought about what I wanted in the future, and what I really wanted was to start a production company and kind of be in charge of making these shows happen. Fashion shows over photo shoots for me, I'm afraid. I do really love a fashion show. I did do some independent styling bits. I worked with an incredible stylist, Amsterdam magazine numero. We had an incredible shoot and kept in contact with him as well. It's all about networking. It's all about absolutely embracing every opportunity that comes your way and saying yes to everything. You are going to be working for free for a long time, and it's worth it because of the networking that you get. Some other independent styling that I did on my own, and that was also incredible, really fun. And I really love connecting people. I really love having a concept and being able to find somebody to work with that concept. Whether that be a photographer or a designer or anyone really, makeup artist, and connecting these people together. That's kind of what I loved, which was very much production. My original plan to move to London was put on hold and I couldn't leave Brighton. So I decided to go in and do my master's degree straight off the back of my BA. And I did my master's degree at the University of Sussex in cultural and creative industries, because I didn't want to go straight into a fashion master's, because I didn't know necessarily that design was the route that I was going to be taking. So I wanted to learn about the industry as a whole. And that's kind of where I wanted to be a little bit closer to home as well, because I'd done the commute. University of Creative Arts was at some points an hour and a half away, and I was driving 3 hours a day to get there and back. And we were there a lot. So I knew that I had to be closer to home, and went to Sussex University, which is luckily only down the road, and an incredible university. And I did cultural and creative industries and met some amazing people. I also was able to hone in on their opportunities and really bring fashion to the forefront of my course and make sure that I was still sticking to my roots of fashion, I was able to actually host a fashion show for the Festival of Ideas at the university. It was a panel talk for women in fashion and kind of discussing a lot of different aspects of fashion for women. We had the amazing model Ilma. She came in speaking about her sort of side of being a model. We had Erica Travis from Dazed magazine, who I actually went to school with, but then met on my Dazed shoot when I was featured on Dazed Digital. And we also had Georgia, who was a ex-University of Sussex student who then went on to work for Hello magazine and is now a freelance journalist in the fashion world. My amazing friend Kat O'Brien, who I did my internship with and is a local Brighton designer as well. So we had a designer, a model, someone who works more in the magazine side of it, and then someone who is more journalist. And then we had a little runway presentation of some local designers and featured Katie France London bags. We had Kat O'Brien's stuff, we had my stuff, we had salt hats, and then we had Georgia's little handmade scrunchies that her and her mum do as well. And of course we had our guest Vixen from Vixen Fitness show some items as well, being able to run and host this event. So it's kind of been a bit of a 180, not a 180, I suppose it's kind of been a bit of a full circle moment. Originally starting my university career doing events, ending it in fashion, but then bringing it back round to wanting to do events in fashion and do production in fashion. Now, during my master's degree, I had to do a 6-week work placement, which I did at the production company Be The Fox. Came to choose to do that through, again, another mum at the school gates. Come in and learn about the production side of things from a whole nother angle, and it wasn't fashion focused, it was production focused for advertisements. So it was really nice to see production in a new light. One thing I did learn was I am not very good in an office setting. And that is no shade to Be The Fox. They have the most incredible team. They have the most incredible setup, incredible office, everything. It was just me and my personality. I need to be here, there and everywhere. Placement really kind of honed in on the fact that I need to be working for myself and I need to be doing either something from home or freelance or working in that aspect. Now, that brought me on to the podcast. So I went on holiday to Morocco, broke up with a boyfriend, and really kind of sat there thinking like, shit, my master's is finished, my BA is finished, there's no more university I can fall back on. I did think about doing my doctorate, but my mum said no. And I was like, shit, what the fuck do I want to do? And I'd always wanted to do the podcast before, like way before I actually started it. I wanted to do it like for years. But I was really, really scared to do it because of the boy I was with at the time was not as open as I am, I would say, in terms of sort of sex. And sex was like a huge thing that I wanted to be talking about. And I was so scared to embarrass him or make his friends judge him even more for being with me. So that was something that I really had to come to terms with, because I definitely put him in our relationship first when this is something that I've wanted to be doing. So when I broke up with him and we came back from Morocco, I really just threw myself at the podcast. I threw myself at social media content, and I threw myself at preparing for the podcast by speaking to studios, by figuring out whether I wanted to hire someone for editing or whether I was going to do it myself type thing. And then obviously actually getting the equipment itself, getting my lights, getting my backdrop sorted, moving my room around, prepping my laptop, finding the good camera, mics, everything. I wanted it to be professional from the get-go. And I'm so happy with how it is at the moment. I absolutely love it. I am now really, really focused on trying to make the podcast available to everybody, making sure that people are being able to access it, and I'm able to kind of speak about fashion and speak about sex. I will continue working in the fashion industry. I think I will continue working in the fashion industry for the rest of my life. I'm just going to be doing it in a different way. I'm still always here to help for stylists and stuff. I love just being involved. I'm a yes girl. I always say yes to everything, if I can, obviously, timetable permitting, and just immersing myself in the culture and the people of the fashion industry. I've met some incredible people, worked for some incredible places, seen some absolutely insane clothing, You know, I've worked with Burberry Clothing, I've worked at Hunger Magazine, worked with Rankin, obviously at Hunger, Kim, some amazing makeup artists, some amazing photographers. And that is just, something that I really want to continue. I think the collaboration is a huge thing for me. And this is why I love having guests on the podcast and having people coming to talk about fashion and the fashion industry, and obviously in the sex industry, and how they kind of like connect and stuff, and body confidence, gender identity, all those things are so important to me, and that's kind of why I'm sat here talking about it all the time. My advice for any fashion student who is listening is, or even if you're not a fashion student, do I think you need to go to university to work in the fashion industry? No, not necessarily. It is a lot about networking, and it's a lot about who you are as a person. Your Instagram and your social media is definitely where you're going to get a lot of your work. I find that I get a lot of my work through Instagram, assisting work, the page. They are always on the lookout for people who are able to help, and just meet loads of people, network with everybody, be nice to everybody, and make yourself likable and set, and people will use you. People will be willing to work with you and ask over and over again. I always have a set team of people who I'm always willing to ask if I'm ever on a shoot or doing anything that I think are, you know, worth having back. And I think that is the key thing, is if you are worth having back, people will be happy to have you back in a heartbeat. Now, don't get me wrong, I have been incredibly lucky, and I do think that going to uni to study fashion is a good thing, because you do build your network from there, from the start. I really don't think you do have to. They do teach you good things about like your portfolio and how to kind of get yourself out there with things like that. But it is mainly about networking. And obviously I have been incredibly lucky, because I met Kim through the school, through my son. A lot of people aren't gonna just randomly meet a high-end fashion stylist on a random Wednesday morning, but you will meet people, and reach out on Instagram, reach out on LinkedIn, whatever platform you're using, and don't be afraid to ask. You know, I've reached out to so many people to be guests on the podcast, and to be honest, nearly everyone has said yes. I've had 2 no's due to scheduling or anything like that, and a lot of people are willing to help. The fashion industry isn't great. It's not great when you're first starting out. You are going to be working for free for a lot of it. It's going to be difficult to find a very, you know, well-paying, steady job. It's not a route I would have gone down anyway, just because I don't think I can kind of work one of those jobs. I'm more of, like I say, I like freelance. I like being at home. I like working from home. I like working for myself. But if you are looking for a job like that, then it is hard work. It really, really is. And I think that goes for any creative industry. And I'm sure a lot of you kind of know that already and have kind of understood that path when you start your university application, or when you first begin going down that route. Is it worth it? Yeah, 100% it's worth it. I've honestly had so many amazing memories, and I feel like I've ticked off so many things so quickly in such a short period of time. You know, being featured in a magazine, modelling on London Fashion Week runway, meeting incredible stars and people in the fashion industry who I've always admired, and now I can call them friends. The incredible industry. It's definitely changing. A lot of things have been changing. You know, we're seeing a lot more curvy girls on the runway. We're seeing a lot more acceptance. We're seeing a lot more assistance being used in a less, how do you say this? A less exploitive way. There's a lot more, obviously with cancel culture and stuff, a lot of people are a lot more kinder, and they think about things. It's not fashion back in the 90s. It's not fashion back in the 80s. You know, it is very much, or the 2000s even. It's a very friendly place. I have rarely had issues. Very, 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 very rarely. In fact, I can't even think of an issue I've had on the top of my head. I really, really can't. If your goal is money, it definitely is a difficult industry. If your goal is creativity, again, it is a very difficult industry. You can be creative in the industry at a certain point, but getting to that point is hard work. You've got to be willing to work. You've got to be willing to say yes. You've got to be willing to work for free. But it's incredible, and I love it, and I wish to always be in some sort of fashion. And the podcast is how I'm kind of keeping myself involved in the fashion industry. but doing it my way. And I think that's really important. Do it your way, do it how you want to do it, have your goals, have your vision board, and just roll with it. So that was part 1 of my 2-parter series of a bit of background about me. That was the kind of the history and where I'm going with fashion. And next week will be the history of sex in terms of me. So I hope to see you there. Thank you so much for listening or watching that episode of Fashion Is My Foreplay. If you enjoyed this episode, then don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. You can find us on Instagram, TikTok or YouTube. All of it is at Fashion Is My Foreplay. And if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, leaving a quick review really helps the pod get seen by some more people. Make sure you tap subscribe and turn notifications on so you never miss a new episode. And also, if you'd like to go one step further and support the show, then you can head over to the Buy Me a Coffee link in my Instagram bio. It's a great way just to help us keep creating and, making more of this. I'll see you next week for another episode of Fashion Is My Foreplay.